Hello, divine creations. Thank you so much for dropping by this video. To anyone who's new to this channel is dedicated to helping people understand the difference between authentic non-duality and bullshit non-duality, often called Neo-Advaita. So I've been deconstructing and in the process of healing myself from Neo-Advaita, or being healed, and trying to support other people in recovering from Neo-Advaita. And I feel like I finally cracked the code, cracked exactly how Neo-Advaita operates, more specifically why it's so hard to leave it. Crack the code sounds a little dramatic. Okay, another major piece of the code of how Neo-Advaita operates. I see it now. So, as I've shared many times, in traditional Advaita Vedanta, there's this whole process of preparation. The personality is prepared. One very famous traditional Advaita teacher, Swami Dhyanananda, said that the person has to become an adult first. Another teacher who I studied with said there has to be more or less harmony and balance in all the major aspects of the life, in one's life, and in one's personality. You have to be emotionally mature and emotionally stable and stabilized before the practice of self-inquiry. So in traditional Advaita, that's just the way of it. That's how it operates. Neo-Advaita, on the other hand, just throws everyone in to the process of self-inquiry. And I finally have figured out what happens. What happens is Neo-Advaita creates a false self within the false self. So it goes something like this. You've got all these emotional issues, you've got fears, you've got financial troubles or addictions, and instead of tending to those things, Neo-Advaita offers you one of two techniques: to practice self-inquiry, which will dissociate you from those things, or to just think non-dual thoughts like, I am the self, I am not my body, I don't have any problems, I'm forever free. But regardless, these two things, all they do is they dissociate you from feelings, thoughts, life situations. They don't actually resolve them. They give short-term relief, for sure. Now, if you continue, as I did, as a person continues down this path, what happens is it creates a personality. It creates this identity of the non-dual practitioner or the non-dual person, the person who's constantly thinking these non-dual thoughts, the person who's constantly dissociating from themselves, turning away from their problems. And then at a certain point, identity switches from the messed up personality to the fake non-dual personality. I don't want to say non-dual, to the personality that just constantly dissociates from things and constantly thinks non-dual thoughts. Let's call it the Neo-Advaita personality. So traditional Advaita agrees that the problem is identity, that through this mysterious process, consciousness, which cannot be limited, thinks it's something that it's not. And so it has this very almost scientific process of reorganizing the personality so that, and making the personality more balanced and subtle, so that one can ever so gently remove identification and then identify with the self. And then there's this whole process of integration, which I'm not going to go into here because I'm honestly not qualified to talk about it. But it's this very, very precise process. Neo-Advaita, on the other hand, instead of resolving the issues of the personality, what it does is it creates another personality. And so identity doesn't actually switch to consciousness, to the self. It switches to this Neo-Advaita personality, again, which is this process of dissociative self-inquiry and this process of thinking non-dual thoughts all day. And the way you can spot it is that the people who have done this, all they can do is talk non-dual talk. That's why they repeat themselves over and over and over again, because it's this thing they've created that they have to sustain. So they may have all this eloquent talk, but you can feel that something's off, that something's not congruent. If you want to know what I'm talking about, go back to my early videos, like 2019, and you can see that I was like a shell of a personality. My personality was just like dead. There was no life. There was no vitality. And I'm not saying like right now I'm, fired up and excited, and I'm not saying I'm like this all the time, but that slowly is coming back in my own healing process. And I'm starting to feel more and more congruent with my human self. Congruent means that my actions and my energy are harmonious with how I actually feel. Like incongruence is like if I'm angry, but I'm like, and I'm smiling, right? That's incongruent. And so you can feel it with people who are into Neo-Advaita. You can feel this incongruency. And I've gotten to the point where it just creeps me out because I can just feel it. But so that's how Neo-Advaita works. It just switches identification with the personality to identification with this Neo-Advaita personality, which gets created in satsang. And so what makes it even worse is that then people think they're enlightened, and they think that what they're thinking, and they think that this Neo-Advaita personality is then true. It's true and it's enlightened, or so they think. And so it makes it even harder to let go of. So one more piece in the puzzle, I think a pretty significant piece, actually. Because then all this time, energy, and attention gets put towards maintaining this new personality and defending it, because this new personality now is built on an ideology. Wow. Mind blown. So this channel, I started this channel to expose a particular Neo-Advaita teacher. And then I switched to trying to educate people on, well, what is authentic non-duality? And then I switched to how can we recover? And by we, I really meant me, because I was, I was still very much in it. And now this channel is about for me is more just about sharing my journey and sharing my insights with the hope that they're helpful. Because this is really hard to say, and I don't want to say this to discourage anyone, is like, I can't I'll just talk about myself. There was nothing anyone could have done that could have popped me out sooner of Neo-Advaita. It just happened the way it happened for me. Of course, my hope is that in doing this, I help people to pop out a little more quickly and a little, maybe it'll be more gentle of a process. That's my hope. But the long and short of it is, a big part of it has to do with grace. And I'm utterly convinced I'm alive by grace and that I popped out by grace. And part of it just has to do with timing. It's like I wasn't ready until I was ready. And then even once I popped out of Neo-Advaita, which again, that was 2019, it took me another solid 4 years to really 100% say no to all things Neo-Advaita. It's hard to put into language because there's different aspects. There's popping out, meaning realizing Neo-Advaita is false. Then there's the process of turning away from Neo-Advaita. And what I found in my case is that I would then turn to other spiritual teachings that were like Neo-Advaita that would help me spiritually bypass. And then there was the process of trying to heal, of trying to regain my humanity, trying to rebuild myself and my life. Then there was a very strong moment where I was like, I made the commitment, like, no, I need to be human. And so there's one thing to make a commitment, another thing to live by it. That was almost a year and a half ago that I made that commitment. And then there's the healing process, which just takes time. Ask anyone who's grieved, who successfully grieved a loss, is like grieving has its own rhythm that you can't really force. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to say is the process of Neo-Advaita. I'm not discouraging anyone from doing what they think will be helpful, but there's this other, which you could call the yang or masculine aspect, like taking right action. But there's also the yin aspect of surrender, of opening to grace, of being like, I can't force this process. When I say I couldn't force that process with myself. I sure tried to force it. I was like, okay, I'm going to be human now and I'm going to rebuild my life and da-da-da. Those intentions were good and taking those actions were good, but the results were out of my hands because I'm becoming more and more convinced that there's different levels of being impacted by Neo-Advaita. There's kind of like starting to get caught in it and it's easy to pop out. There's kind of starting to get like stuck. And that really takes a good push. And then there's like going far down the hole, and that really takes grace. It takes grace and grit, and that was me. I went pretty far down the hole. So because there's a lot to lose in the healing process. There's one of the hardest things for me to lose was the thought that I'm enlightened or I've got it figured out. And here's the embarrassing one. It was unconscious for a long time, but thinking I was better than everybody else. Neo-Advaita puffs up the ego and gives this false sense of importance. That was one of the hardest things to let go of. And it was unconscious for a very long time of like, I know these non-dual concepts. I can access these non-dual states of consciousness. So I'm better than everybody else. Well, That was bullshit. And so that's part of the false Neo-Advaita identity that gets built up. The dissociative self-inquiry, the constant thinking of non-dual thoughts, and this like, I'm enlightened, or I didn't used to go around thinking I was enlightened, but I'm superior, or I'm more awake than everybody else, or like, I know the truth and these other people are clueless or they don't get it. Like I very rarely thought like, oh, I'm better than everybody else. But there were that thought, that belief was there and it was driving my life. And of course it was complete. It's just complete absurdity given how dysfunctional I've been through this whole process. So there's another piece of the puzzle, friends. Thank you so much to everyone who comes by this channel. You know, if nobody came by this channel, I would still probably make these videos just for my own healing. But even that one person comes by and gets benefit, it's so meaningful to me. So prayers for everyone who comes by here, and for all those who are still caught in the Neo-Advaita web. And I just want everyone who comes by this channel to know. I think about people who are still caught in Neo-Advaita, and I think about the people who are trying to recover. I think about all of you so often. And I'm kind of obsessed with what can I do to help? I wouldn't say obsessed, but I think about it a lot. I pray about it a lot. I reflect a lot. I ask myself, what can I do? How can I structure this work? And I have ideas, which I'm sitting with. And some of them I've already put into action, like this YouTube channel, like the webpage. I hosted one support group. Been working on a book, but I just want you to all. I just want the people. You know, I'm gonna make a whole. I'm just gonna make a separate video where I say this because a lot of people won't watch a 17-minute video. I think about all of you often. And please hold me in your prayers. I'm not a guru. I'm not enlightened. I'm in my own healing process, my own journey. And blessings to all of you. Thanks so much.